Painting won't pay the bills, Christina said with a smirk, standing in the doorway of my small art studio. Her long, perfectly shaped nails tapped against the doorframe, each tap filled with irritation. When are you going to grow up and get a real job? My Paul deserves better than this. I didn't answer. I just kept brushing gentle shadows across the mountain scene I was working on. After 6 years of being married to Paul, I had learned how to ignore her. I had trained myself to let her words slide off like a water-hitting stone. My name is Ruth Kearney. I'm 31 years old, and I've spent the last 8 years building a life that someone like Christina Perry would never understand. To her, I was a failure. A silly woman who wasted her time painting instead of sitting behind a desk in a suit, like her perfect son Paul. She always looked at me like I didn't belong in their world. Without asking, she stepped into the room. Her expensive heels made sharp clicking sounds on the wooden floor. "You know, Ruth," she said with fake sweetness, "there's a great job opening at Paul's company. A nice office job. Something respectable. You should apply. It would be good for you." I gently placed my brush down on the table and took a slow breath. "Thanks for the suggestion, Christina, but I'm happy doing what I love. I'm happy with my art." She rolled her eyes and picked up one of my small canvas paintings like it was something worthless, like a piece of trash someone had tossed aside. "Happy doesn't pay the bills. My son deserves a better life. This," she waved her hand at the entire studio, "this is just a silly hobby. A grown woman should help out, not hide in here like some child." If only she knew the truth. For years, I had been selling my paintings online under a different name. I had built a strong following. My work had been shown in small galleries and sold to collectors. I was quietly becoming successful, but Paul begged me to keep it a secret. "My mom's old-fashioned," he would say. "She won't understand." Christina's sharp eyes scanned the room, like she was looking at a mess that needed to be cleaned up. To me, it was my peaceful space. My safe place. The light from the late afternoon sun poured through the windows. The air smelled like paint and fresh canvas. But to her, it was a waste of space. "At least paint something nice," she added with a shrug. "People like flowers. Paint something pretty that people actually want to buy." I didn't respond. I just stared at her, wondering how someone could be so blind to what really mattered. I almost laughed out loud. The moody landscape painting Christina just dismissed? It had a long waiting list of buyers. My work, signed under the name Roshani Chakshi, was already hanging in galleries all over the country. But she had no idea. "Passion is sweet," she said, her voice fake and sugary, "but passion doesn't pay the bills. Paul works so hard. And what do? You lock yourself in this room with your brushes like a little girl lost in daydreams." Before I could say anything, my phone buzzed. I looked down. A message from my gallery appeared on the screen. "Major collector interested in your mountain series. 7-figure offer. Call ASAP." I slid my phone back into my pocket and stopped myself from smiling. Christina didn't even notice. She was too busy smoothing out her blouse, getting ready to make her big announcement. "Paul and I have been talking about your situation," she said proudly, like she was about to hand down a royal order. "And we both agree, this has to end. It's time for you to live in the real world, Ruth." I stood still. "My situation?" "He agrees with me completely," she added, sounding way too proud of herself. "This little painting hobby of yours is holding both of you back. Paul could have been made partner by now, but he keeps having to explain why his wife spends all day playing with colors instead of working a proper job." A cold anger settled in my chest. Paul and I were definitely going to have a serious talk later. "My art is my job, Christina," I said calmly. She laughed. "Oh, please. When was the last time you actually sold anything? And don't count those little paintings you give your friends for pocket change." I looked at her and stayed quiet. I thought about the private collector in Rome who had just ordered a full series. I thought about the auction houses in Boston and the growing list of buyers waiting for my new pieces. But Paul always said it was better to stay quiet. "It's just easier," he told me, "than dealing with Mom." "I do okay," I replied, keeping it simple. Her smile faded and turned cold. "Not for much longer," she said flatly. "Paul has agreed. This space will become his new home office. Something clean. Something professional. You'll need to clear everything out by the weekend. I didn't say a word. I just looked around at the space I built with love, paint, and years of quiet work. My studio. My world. And I knew, no matter what they said, I wasn't giving it up without a fight. I stopped moving. This is my studio, I said slowly and firmly. Christina smiled, shaking her head.
Was your studio, she said.
We already ordered Paul's new office furniture. For 6 years, I had kept quiet. I let her make rude comments about my art. I listened when Paul told me not to make things worse, to keep the peace. I gave up arguments for the sake of avoiding drama. But right then, everything became clear. I had been quiet for too long. No, I said softly. Christina's head snapped up. Excuse me, she asked. I said no. I repeated, standing tall. I looked her straight in the eye. This is my space. This is my career. You have no right to make decisions about what happens in here. Her face twisted with anger. After everything I've done for you, she snapped. You're exactly the reason Paul could have done better. She stormed forward and grabbed one of my finished paintings. It was one of the pieces from the Mountain series, the same series that a collector had just made a huge offer on. Before I could react, she threw it on the floor. It landed on the corner of the easel and tore through the canvas. Christina, stop, I shouted. But she didn't stop. She grabbed another painting. Her breathing was fast and heavy, full of rage. If you won't listen to reason, she hissed, then maybe it's time for a little tough love. I stood there, frozen, watching her tear through my work like a hurricane. Paintings I had poured my heart into, hours of care and emotion, now being destroyed in seconds. But what she didn't know was that this wasn't just art to me. These paintings were worth real money, some thousands of dollars, some even tens of thousands. And what she also didn't know was that I had installed security cameras in my studio to protect my work. Every second of her tantrum was being recorded. I slowly pulled out my phone and hit the record button too, filming the damage she was doing. Sometimes revenge doesn't mean shouting or fighting. Sometimes it means staying calm and letting someone show their true self. Finally, she stopped. Her face was red, her hair slightly out of place, and she was breathing heavily. All around her were ripped canvases and shattered dreams. At least, that's what she thought. She straightened her blouse and looked at me with a cold smile. Now, she said, you can focus on being the kind of wife my son actually deserves. I met her gaze without blinking. Then I calmly pressed send on the video message. Thank you, Christina, I said, my voice steady. Her face shifted just slightly. I smiled. For showing me exactly who you are. Who am I, Christina? She had looked so pleased with herself after destroying my studio. That proud little smile still sat on her lips until my phone buzzed again and again. I answered it and put it on speaker. If she wanted to be involved in my life, she might as well hear what was coming. Roshani Chakshi, this is Ryan from Houston Gallery. The voice said clearly. The collector is ready to wire the 7-figure payment for the Mountain series. When can we arrange pickup? Christina's face lost all its color. Her eyes widened as she looked at the torn paintings scattered across the floor. I stayed calm. We have a problem, Ryan, I said, each word slow and clear. Several pieces from that series were just destroyed on purpose. I have the video footage. There was silence on the other end. Then Ryan's voice changed. It became serious. Destroyed? Those works are insured by millions. Who did this? I turned to Christina. She had slumped into the paint-splattered chair in the corner, hands shaking. She looked like a child who had just realized the mess she made was permanent.
She tried to speak.
Roshani Chakshi, you're Roshani Chakshi? I nodded, still talking to Ryan. Send the insurance adjusters. I'll forward the video right now. When I ended the call, I looked her straight in the eye. Yes, Christina. I'm Roshani Chakshi, the artist who sold a painting last month for $400,000. The one whose work hangs in galleries and museums. The one whose little hobby paid for the luxury car you love bragging about when Paul drives it. Her lips trembled. But that's not possible. Roshani Chakshi is. Is what? I asked. Successful? Respected? A real professional? I pointed to the torn canvases all around us. You just destroyed about $3 million worth of art. Art that was already sold. Art that was insured. She could barely speak. Paul never told me. I let out a breath. Because he knew you'd never take it seriously. He thought it would be easier to let you believe I was just playing with paint instead of standing up to you. And I went along with it. We both did. I gave a dry laugh. Look where that got us. My phone buzzed again. Messages from the insurance company started rolling in. I forwarded them the video while Christina watched, her eyes wide with fear. Ruth. I didn't know, she whispered. No, you didn't, I replied. Because you never cared to ask. You were too busy trying to tell me what kind of woman I should be. She reached out, desperate now. We can fix this. Paul, and I will fix it. I raised an eyebrow. With what money, Christina? Those paintings were worth more than your house. She looked down and nervously smoothed her expensive blouse. Please don't tell Paul. It would break his heart. I just looked at her, silent. Her shame said more than anything I could. I let out a deep breath and looked straight at her. Break his heart, I said quietly. Like how you two planned to take away my studio. Like how you've spent years making fun of my career while living off the money it brings in. Before she could reply, the studio's security system made a soft chime. The insurance adjusters arrived, along with Ryan from the gallery. Their eyes moved slowly across the ruined paintings. Their expressions turned serious. This is not an accident, one of the adjusters said. This is clearly done on purpose. The insurance company will demand full payment for the damage. Christina's face fell apart. She looked pale, her hands shaking. Ruth, please, she whispered. I'm Paul's mother. You can't do this to me. I met her eyes calmly. I'm not doing anything to you, Christina. You did this to yourself. Ryan ran his hand through his hair, still staring at the ripped canvases. The collector will be crushed, he muttered. These pieces were meant to be the highlight of the new museum wing. Christina looked confused. Museum wing? Yes, Christina, I said. That Moody Mountain series you called childish? It was created for the National Light exhibition at the Modern Art Museum. They've been talking about it for months. Finally, she seemed to understand the seriousness of what she had done. Her perfect appearance began to fall apart as tears filled her eyes. Her voice cracked into a sob. What can I do? She begged. There has to be something. I breathed in slowly and answered with calm. Start by leaving my studio. The insurance company will handle the rest. And Christina. She looked up. Don't ever tell me what a real woman is supposed to do again. She ran out, crying. Ryan stayed behind for a moment. Ruth, I'm really sorry. The collector will want answers. I looked at the ruined room. Paintings I had spent years working on were destroyed in minutes. Still, my mind was already moving. Tell them I'll make something new, I said. Something even better. Sometimes destruction brings fresh ideas. After everyone left, I stayed in the quiet, surrounded by what was left of my work. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Paul. Mom called. She was crying. What happened? I took a breath and typed slowly. Come home. We need to talk about why you told your mother she could take over my studio. And why you've spent years hiding my success. He replied right away. I was trying to protect you from her. I stared at the screen, then answered. No. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting her from the truth. And now we're both paying the price. I looked around the room again. Broken, yes. But maybe now, finally, free. For the first time in years, I felt free. No more hiding who I was. No more shrinking my success just to make someone else feel better. I didn't need to stay quiet anymore. As I began cleaning up the mess in my studio, something caught my eye and made me smile. The large canvas I had been working on, the one Christina had mocked earlier, was still there. Untouched. Safe. It felt like a small miracle. Like the universe had stepped in with a little bit of irony. Just then, my phone lit up with one more message. This time, it was from the museum curator. Heard what happened. Don't worry about the original series. We'd love a new commission, something about transformation and resilience. Your price. Your timeline. I stared at the screen, reading the words twice to make sure they were real. Then I looked around my messy, broken studio. That familiar spark of inspiration stirred in me again. Christina had thought she was destroying my art. What she didn't know was that she had given me something more powerful, something new to say. As the sun started to set and golden light streamed through the broken blinds, I heard Paul's car pull into the driveway. Another hard conversation was coming. I knew that, but I also knew I was ready for it. No more hiding. No more giving up parts of myself to make others comfortable. No more letting anyone else decide how much I mattered. That evening, I stood among the torn canvases, dried paint, and shattered glass. Paul walked into the studio and stopped in his tracks. His eyes widened as he saw the damage. I watched his expression shift, from surprise to anger and then to shame. He walked over and picked up a torn piece of canvas, his hands tight around the edge. I never thought she'd actually do this, he said quietly. When she mentioned turning the studio into an office, I don't know what I thought. You thought it was easier to let her do what she wanted than to stand up to her, I said calmly. Just like it was easier to pretend my career didn't matter, so she wouldn't have to see me for who I really am. Paul sighed deeply. I'll fix this. I'll make sure she pays for everything, the damage, the commissions. She can't afford it, I interrupted. And even if she could, that's not the point. He looked at me, confused. Then what is? This isn't about money, Paul. It's about how you've spent years protecting her feelings while ignoring my worth. Look around, I said, motioning to the ruined artwork. How long were you going to let her believe I was just playing with paint? How long were you going to let her treat me like I was nothing? The silence between us stretched long and heavy. I thought I was keeping the peace, he finally said. I nodded. But at what cost? I never meant for this to happen, Paul said. I know, I replied. But it did happen. And now we have to decide what happens next. The weeks that followed were full of change. The insurance company processed the claim quickly, thanks to the clear security footage. Christina didn't just face a huge financial loss. She also faced public embarrassment. The story spread fast in the art world. Everyone was talking about the woman who destroyed valuable paintings in a fit of rage. At the same time, the truth about my identity came out. People now knew I was Roshani Chakshi. Suddenly, I was being asked for interviews, magazine features, and new projects. My name and work were everywhere. The museum that had originally commissioned the Mountain series didn't cancel the project. Instead, they asked for something new, this time about destruction and resilience. They even planned to include a video of Christina's outburst as part of the exhibit, turning what she tried to destroy into a powerful message about strength and rebuilding. Paul moved out for a while. He said he needed time to think about everything. I didn't argue. I had work to do. The paintings I made after that were different. They were raw, emotional, and honest. They told a story, my story. A story about breaking free, rebuilding, and finding my voice again. For months later, I was putting the last touches on my freshly renovated studio when Christina showed up uninvited. She stood in the doorway, looking smaller and more tired than I had ever seen her. The insurance company is taking money from my paychecks, she said right away. It'll take me years to pay back the damage. I didn't look at her. I kept painting. That sounds fair, I said simply. I've been going to therapy, she continued. I've been trying to figure out why I act the way I do. Why I felt the need to control everything. Why I did what I did to you. She paused, swallowing hard. I'm sorry, Ruth. Not just for the studio, but for everything. For all the years I made you feel small. I slowly set my paintbrush down and looked up at her. Thank you for saying that, I said. But you know words aren't enough, right? She nodded. Her eyes were full of tears. I saw your new paintings, she whispered. The magazine feature. It was beautiful. I never let myself see the value in your work before. But now I understand. I really do. I see why people love it. For the first time, her voice didn't sound fake or proud. It sounded real. I didn't reply right away. I just stood there in my new studio, knowing that everything had changed, and this time, it was finally for the better. I looked at the painting in front of me. It showed a phoenix rising from torn pieces of canvas, put back together with care. Bright colors blended with the dark edges, and it looked like the bird was flying out of brokenness into light. Sometimes we have to lose everything to realize what we had all along. Christina didn't say another word. She quietly turned and left. I picked up my brush again and returned to my work. That night, my phone rang. It was Paul. "Can I come to your gallery opening?" he asked gently. Not as someone trying to protect you, just as someone who believes in you. I paused for a moment, then said, "Yes." The next evening, the exhibition opened. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The gallery was full of people, artists, collectors, reporters. The air buzzed with excitement. People whispered as they stared at the paintings. Some even stood quietly, just soaking in the emotions captured on the canvas. The new series was called Destruction and Rebirth. It told a story through color and shape, pain and beauty. People felt it deeply. Many told me they were moved by how raw and real it felt. For the first time, I wasn't just sharing art. I was sharing myself. Paul came as he promised. He stood in the crowd, proud but quiet, never trying to take the spotlight. He didn't try to explain or defend anyone. He simply supported me. And for that, I was thankful. As I stood in the center of the gallery, hearing the soft hum of voices and seeing the reactions to my work, I realized something important. Christina had spent years trying to shape me into her version of a perfect woman. She tried to take away my space, my art, and even my voice. But in doing that, she gave me something I never expected, my greatest inspiration. Later that night, I stood alone in my studio again. The air was calm. The last rays of sunlight shined through the window, landing gently on the phoenix painting. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel bitterness or regret. Instead, I felt something I hadn't expected: gratitude. Gratitude for the strength I had built, for the voice I had found, for the art that had always been there, waiting to speak louder than words. And strangely, even for Christina, the woman who had tried so hard to erase me had, without meaning to, helped me paint the clearest picture of who I really was. A survivor. An artist. A woman who finally knew her worth.